What's going on, guys? Steve here. I'm gonna talk about Dustin Poirier right now. There's big talk in the MMA world. Dustin Poirier's kind of announced that his retirement fight will be his next fight, and who is he gonna fight? When is he gonna fight? So let's talk about it. UFC 314 Miami's coming up. This would be a prime location for Dustin to hang up his gloves. He's a Coconut Creek, Florida, American top team fighter. Miami makes sense. But there's also kind of this talks, and even Dustin himself has been talking about New Orleans, Louisiana card this summer. The UFC hasn't really announced that, but that would be in his hometown, home state, and that would probably be more where Dustin would want to end his legacy, for good. So with those two events, those are probably the prime events for his retirement. That kind of gives us a bit of a timeline. We're going to see his fight between probably somewhere between April and September. So first fighter that I want to talk about, because it kind of like was a call out that made news, was Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. I kind of like that fight. I think that'd be a cool fight to happen, but that's when Dustin stepped in and said, no, sorry, Paddy, legends only. Respect this from Dustin, but then that kind of makes me question, okay, well, legend, what is a legend? What gives a guy a legend status? I don't think Dustin's going to be getting, a title shot for his last fight. So then, what's that leave? That leaves, maybe a previous champion, Hall of Famers, vets. Is someone going to come out of their retirement to fight him? I don't know. Then, it also comes to question, what weight class is he going to fight? Does Dustin want to cut weight to make a fight? Maybe he takes a fight at welterweight to not cut weight. Middleweight, probably unlikely. Maybe we could even see someone come up from featherweight to fight him. Knowing this isn't a climb the rankings fight, this is a retirement fight. Maybe this is just a big money fight for him. Who knows? So anyways, let's dive in. Let's take a look at some of the fights. So it's kind of some part of the difficulty is that Dustin has really fought almost everyone in the division. But, there's a few fights that make sense, and, but let's just cut some out right away because, with Dustin's statement about the legacy or the legendary requirement for his fighter. So I think, Armin Tazarian, I'm probably not saying that, Armin Tazarian, he's been told he has to refight in the rankings. That doesn't really make sense to me to fight Dustin on his retirement fight for Armin, and then also Armin, is he legend status yet? I don't think so. Renato Moicano, he just came off his loss. He'd probably be ready to fight summertime. But, Renato Moicano, is he legend? I don't think so. And then another fighter that right around Dustin's rankings that would be Gamrot. I think Dustin and Gamrot trained together. I don't think that's a fight that would happen. And again, legend status on Gamrot, not that high currently. So I think those fighters are just a no-go. There is a fighter, though. He just had a fight camp. His fight got canceled on his weigh-ins. He might be probably eager to get back in there as soon as April. Would make sense for this guy. Beneil Dariush. Now, the exciting part about this fight, too, is that these are two guys who, they probably thought they might fight one day, too, but they've kind of just avoided themselves their whole careers. But then, there's also a question, like, where's Dariush in his career right now? Is he wanting to make another title run? Maybe they fight, and maybe they both are thinking, maybe Dariush is thinking about retirement. But regardless, I think this is probably just a win-all for both the fighters, a win against Dustin is still going to boost his ranking in the lightweight division if he does want to go for a title, right? Loss against Dustin doesn't hurt it that bad because Dustin's currently, I think, ranked ahead of him. And then for fans and, UFC and everyone alike, this is a grindy fight. This is where Dustin thrives stylistically. This is an action-packed fight. Could end in a quick knockout, but be an exciting fight for fans and everyone, Miami or Louisiana, wherever it takes place. All right, next fighter I'd like to talk about too, Nate Diaz. Okay, this is maybe people are like, Nate Diaz is gone, he's washed up, whatever. But he's always kind of teasing those comeback fights in MMA, UFC, whatever. And I think like for the right money, he'll take any fight. To be honest, They were scheduled to fight before. This was back in 2018. Poirier pulled out. He had an injury. Blah, blah, blah. Never happened again. Never came to. This is probably, when a lot of money gets thrown around, fights happen, and this would be one of those ones. And who can blame Dustin Poirier maybe wanting to take a big payout on his retirement fight? I think he's going to get paid big regardless. He's a big enough name. And, just being real, like MMA fans everywhere, they're going to tune into a Nate Diaz fight. They're going to tune in. And when they hear he's fighting Dustin Poirier, that's going to be huge for fans. Okay, anyways, let's move on here. So this one's a little bit more of a wild thought, and maybe a little bit of like, the stars aligned to make this one happen. This one I'm a little biased because I'm a huge fan of this guy, and I'm talking Alex Volkanovski. I think the only way this happens is if the featherweight title is kind of put at the sidelines so Ilia Topuria can step up and fight Islam. Alexander Volkanovski is a guy who doesn't like to stay idle. He likes fighting. He took some time off to recover from his knockout loss last year, which was good. But I think he's ready to go, and I think he's ready to go right now, which would make the April card make sense. Alex is a legend. This would be Alex going up probably to lightweight to fight Poirier, which I don't think is that unrealistic. Stylistically, dream fight for fans. I don't know. The more I think about it, I think that fight could be a reality, honestly. And then let's, moving on, I got a few far-fetched, kind of more crazy ideas, maybe a bit of a Cinderella dual retirement story. A fighter that, years ago he made it clear, he's just wanting to fight big names. He's got no title runs in mind. He is a legend in his own right. He is a former lightweight champion. I think people have forgotten about him, and that's Rafael dos Anjos. Obviously, this would probably be a welterweight fight. I don't think either of these guys would want to cut weight to, I think Dustin, 155 has no problem making it, but RDS, he was a lightweight fighter. He's not dropping down. He wants to fight welterweight. If he even is going to fight, I think it's been a bit since he fought again, but that could be a nice fight. These guys, nothing to lose. They could just let it all out there. They don't have to fight safe. It's just legacy on the line, and a win or loss against either of those guys on their records isn't really going to hurt their legacy that bad. And I think it's an exciting fight. Probably not the most realistic, but a cool idea. Okay, well, let's look at some rematches now. So we have Max Holloway. I think this was one of the first big names people thought he would, Dustin Poirier retirement fight would be against. But if you really look at it, like Dustin's up 2-0. Does he really want to lose against the guy he's 2-0 up against on his retirement? I don't think so. I wouldn't say this fight is probably not possible. The timing wise, Max also recovering from a knockout loss to Poirier. The summer clash for the Louisiana card, if it happens, is kind of the timing would be perfect. But I think this fight for Dustin would be highly unlikely. Maybe a fight Max would love, but probably not going to happen. Michael Chandler. Okay, so I think Dustin Poirier is 1-0 against Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler known for putting on exciting fights. Some people watching this will be like, well, does Michael Chandler really have legendary success? Yeah. If you don't know his Bellator career, he was a 3-time Bellator champion. He beat Patricio Pitbull twice. He had 2 insane wars against Eddie Alvarez. They were 1-1, but their one loss was a split decision going to Eddie. So arguably he could be 2-0. He's 2-0 against former UFC lightweight champ Benson Henderson over there. But that being all said, again, does Dustin really want to fight someone he's 1-0 against and who, is 2-4, I think, in the UFC? I don't think so. It'd be nice for Michael Chandler to get a chance for the redemption shot, but this is Dustin Poirier's retirement we're talking about. I don't think that fight is going to happen. All right, next rematch, Charles Oliveira. Probably a fight Dustin Poirier would love to have. This would be a redemption fight. Who doesn't like a good redemption fight? But I think the argument more is from Charles' side, because I think he set himself up pretty good for a title shot, to get in the line for a title shot. With them saying that Armand has to go back and fight in the rankings, I think Armand versus Charles Oliveira is probably the next title eliminator fight. I think they'll fight, and the winner will fight Islam or possibly Topuria if that fight happens. So I just don't think right now, it's a good move for Charles. That being said, it could happen. Like, I could see, maybe the Armand fight's not really working out, and the lightweight belt is, in the mix with Poirier fighting Islam, and maybe Charles just wants to be active. They throw a bunch of money on for the Dustin fight. Could happen. So rematch wise, there's a few guys left. Conor McGregor. Do I gotta talk about it? It's not gonna happen. Conor ain't coming back. Let's be real. He's not coming back. So, that leaves, I think, one really big rematch. I believe, personally, this is probably the most realistic fight, kind of. I think this is a fight that Dustin Poirier is the fight he wants. They fought twice. They're 1-1. They have unfinished business. Fans love a good trilogy. The UFC loves a good trilogy fight, and that's Justin Gaethje. Man, that got to be the fight, right? Oh, wait. Gaethje's already currently booked to fight Dan Hooker in March. I think Poirier probably is purposely waiting to make any big decision until this fight happens. I think the hope is that Gaethje makes this fight, maybe gets a quick finish. Maybe he just gets a submission loss. I don't know, something happens, and maybe the fight even falls through. And that Gaethje kind of gets out of this fight unharmed. And, he's ready to have a turnaround fight in summer on the Louisiana card against Dustin Poirier. Poirier's retirement fight. I don't think there's a bigger, better fight for the UFC, for fans, for Justin to make than the trilogy fight. I think this would be the best option for Dustin's retirement fight. He might even want to just wait for that fight. So yeah, I think that's the number one. My second choice would probably be, if that fight doesn't work out, of course, would probably be the Nate Diaz fight. With them, that's the money that fight would bring in. Is it a pay-per-view main event? Probably not. It's a co-main, but it would be pretty big deal, 5-rounder. I think that fight makes sense. Rankings aren't even in the picture, right? In that fight, no one cares. No one's gonna. That fight doesn't affect anyone currently in the UFC. That's just a fan fight. It's a big fight, and it doesn't hurt anyone else in the UFC. There's nothing's being held up. Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, and then third, and a fight I would be happy to see, and that's the Beneil Dariush fight. They haven't fought. I personally think Beneil Dariush is a legend. He had a really good run. I think he was one of the guys who started the beating the Tony Ferguson downfall, and I would be stoked to see those two guys fight. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I love everyone's feedback, so go ahead and give it to me, and please, guys, comment who you think Dustin should fight.